Good morning and welcome back to Plannercraft. I'm Natalie and today I'm going to be doing a football. So you can see just here that this is kind of what we're aiming for. It's going to be a little bit different. So at the moment my football is in a clipping mask, which means that while it's perfectly good to print it as is, it won't cut like that. So we're going to show you a different way of working it. But I wanted to show you the process. We had a little bit of a play last night. So Ian did say, one, to warn you, this could be a long one. And secondly, it definitely did not go right first time. So if you are creating along with me, don't panic. You can always go back a little and re-watch after. So first of all, hi to Tanya. I'm just waiting for my comments to update because I can only see comments if you're commenting on the main page today, just because obviously the computer's running the stream today. So our football actually starts off as a flat net, so if you want to take a quick screenshot of this to refer back to, you are perfectly welcome to. So I will pause on that screen just for a moment. If you are on an iPad, you can use your home and power button to take a screenshot. I'm not sure what the key press is for an Android, but I'm sure there is one. Or if you're on a Mac, you can do a Command Shift and 3 to take a screenshot of the full screen, or Command Shift and 4 to take part of a screen. Or you can just use the print key button on a PC. So, without too much further ado, let's get started. So I've just done mine on an A4 document, so don't worry about document size at this point. It's more important that you get the theory right as to how we're going to lay these out. So let's start a new document. And I'm going to bring it up a bit bigger. So I do have all the stages open, so if it does seem a bit slow, that is why. I wanted to be able to show you that where you go from each stage. So I'm going to zoom in using my plus key so that we can see our full page. If you want to go a bit closer, you can do. And over on the left hand side we have create stars and polygons. If we click that button, you can see that our context bar at the top is going to change. You want 5 corners so that we can do a pentagon. We're going to click and drag out our pentagon. Now with Inkscape there's no key press to make sure that this stays level or equal or anything like that. You're just literally going to click and drag and get it as close to level as you can. Now you may find that yours looks a little bit different just in terms of colour and stroke. So if we go to fill and stroke, first of all fill, I'm going to take down to white. So to do that you want your RGB sliders to be at max. Okay. Now the reason I'm doing it white rather than transparent is if we took the fill out altogether, when we click on it, it's just going to see it as a whole and it won't actually activate that shape. So it just makes it a little bit easier for you to have it as white. Your stroke, you're going to want to put a bit thicker. So I've gone for 3.871mm, just using the little plus and minus buttons. So this is basically going to be the outline that you will end up cutting. To change the colour of your stroke, you'll see that you've got a colour bar along the bottom of your screen. And you can right click on any of these colours, doesn't matter which, and you can go to set stroke and that will change the colour of your stroke. So hopefully you are all doing okay. For whatever reason my comments don't seem to be updating. Let me go. Okay, well, so it goes. So at the moment, this is just a shape, and so if we go to our node tool, you can see that there's no nodes. So what we need to do first of all is take it from a shape to a path. So if we go path and object to path, so that's taking it from that shape to a path so that we can play with the nodes. Now for this centre pentagon, that isn't going to make much difference. But as we start to duplicate it and move it around the outside, then we're going to want to start playing with nodes. Dreaded nodes. But it's okay, it's going to be nice and easy. Honest. So I'm going to put my pentagon kind of towards the centre because we're going to be building up around it. I'm going to make a copy, so you can use Command and D on a Mac, and it feels like it. Come on, over there. There we go. Or Control and D on PC. I'm going to double click it so that I've got these little curved arrows on the corners. Now there is no shift to constrain your rotation on Inkscape, so you're just going to want to do the best to line it up so you have an even amount of space on this edge here. Okay, click again and you'll see it goes back to its normal arrows, and I'm just going to move it over the top, and because we've done that convert to paths, it's automatically going to try and snap those nodes together. Now another thing I will say about this process is that Inkscape actually finds it easier to do this correctly than Illustrator does. So I tried a few different ways in Illustrator this morning to see if there was an easier way of doing it, and I couldn't find it. So now that we've got our first shape matched up, the next bit's really easy because there's no rotate. So all we're going to do is just duplicate it again, so Command D or Control D. Click and drag it up. Now as I said, mine's going to be going a bit slow because it's got a lot open to handle. And you're going to line up to that next side. And again, duplicate and over, and it feels like it. Come on, you know you want to. There we go. And again. And again. Okay, I'm just going to quick flip back to Streamlabs. So we have got comments, it's just not showing me them. Lovely phone, thank you. Hi to Linda, hi Tracy. Hi Carol. Hi Mum, hi Thea. Hi Deb. And sorry about my phone not showing me comments, really not useful. Bought it in especially because I thought otherwise I'm not going to be able to see what you're saying. It's still not showing me. Okay, so with those pentagons there, we are going to duplicate our centre pentagon. So remember how I said to keep it white so that we can click back on it? This is why. We're going to do a Command and D because we want to duplicate again, and this time it's already the right way round to go back on the outside, and we're going to do that all the way around too. And you're going to see that you're going to start getting these little diamonds appearing but that's fine. Don't worry about those at this stage. Come on, up you get. There we go. He's getting there. Bless. I'm making it work hard today. Come on. I'm trying to do this nice and big as well so you can see what I'm doing. But if you want to do this smaller, you can do. You don't have to do it this big. And we're nearly there. And ta-da! We have most of our net done. So if I zoom back out, you should have something that looks roughly like this. Okay, so now what you need to do is we need to do a little bit of joining the dots. Now the big gaps here are what I want you to focus on. Don't worry about these little gaps. And what we're going to do is we're going to go from this point to this point, 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 and finally this point to this point. Now what I would say is make sure you save at this point. Don't do what I did yesterday and carry on to the point where you do the lattice formation, which is how we're going to make this up ball shaped, and then have it crash on you, because that causes tears. And we don't want that. So save regularly. So hence I have a save for every step of the way, just in case I needed to go back. So this is a good point to save. So let's zoom in and do our joining of the dots. Now the reason I'm not saving is I already have this saved ready to go. So don't follow my example at this point. Make sure you save. So I'm going to go to my pen tool. Make sure that it is using this first mode here. And we're going to join the dots. So you're going to see straight away it's going to try and snap to that node. That's good. And it's going to want to go to this node here. And we can do that as a triangle too. Now bear in mind that straight away you can see it's not going to necessarily follow through with that stroke. So what I did was I just tried to match it up as best as I could. It wasn't really that important because by the time that you actually see it, it's going to be that distorted that any imperfections are going to be hidden. So take your stroke width up so it's roughly the same. And you're going to see that these little bits on the end are hanging off the edge. That's when we're going to use our join options, and make sure that you click on your rounded join. So rounded joins are always really good for anything where you want a smooth finish. Okay. So now you have two options. You can take that shape and duplicate it and rotate it around, or you may go, actually, do you know what, it's much easier to just let your snap handle it, and we can just snap those together. We'll do all the strokes in one go. So let's zoom out, scroll down a bit so that we can get to the rest of our football. And so long as you can see those little X's when you're hovering over a node, you know you're in the right place. There we go. And again here. Okay. press and hold shift and click on each triangle, and we can sort out those strokes. You're going to see that it's going to go to percentage up here. Just go back to millimeters and it's going to take it all out. Don't panic at this point. You can just put them all back in, and again work it up to that, roughly that same width. Round off those corners, and at that point you can usually see if it just needs to go up a little notch. So hopefully you have something that looks like that. So if I pop a colour in these now, you're going to see where we've got gaps. So let's go for yellow today. Now I think you could do a really funky 3D flower with this layout, but that's not what we're aiming for. So again at this point, save. And if you want to give it a new name, you can do, just so that you don't end up having to go too far back if it does all go wrong. So I'm going to hide this down here, and you can see there was my original. So now if I close this one and go back to our footy, you can see that we have all this shape and it looks like it's solid all the way around, but you can see that there's something missing, so we haven't got our diamonds here. So that's the next bit for us to sort. So if I hide that down there, don't want 4, don't want 3. There we go, there's 2. So you can see that we actually close up these diamonds for our next step. And I wish there was an easier way of moving these windows around in Inkscape, but there's not. So there's our new document. So I'm going to select all of these. I'm going to take the colour out now, because we've done everything that we need to do, like so. I'm going to go to path and stroke to path. So what this essentially does is it's going to take those outlines and turn them into frames. Okay. I'm then going to weld those together. And you should see that you get a bounding square box all the way around the outside. So now what we can do is we can use our nodes to close up those diamonds. So let's zoom back in. Going to go to our node tool. You're right out there. And we're going to nudge this so that it's going to go back to having a straight line down this edge. Now because we're warping that shape, it's going to look like it's gone a little thinner, but that's okay, because when we bring our other side across, it's going to start to overlap. So what we will do is another union towards the end. I might do this in 2 parts actually, just looking at the time. Okay, so you're going to want to do this on each one. You also want to try and keep this angle here the same. And I've just done it so they slightly overlap. If at this point you start to think that your line work looks a bit wobbly, don't panic, because when we do our warp, it hides a multitude of sins. is when you're doing this first one, try and get that line as straight as possible, which when you're doing this top one is really easy. And then when we bring our other one across, just make sure they overlap. So I am using my keyboard keys rather than trying to do this with my mouse, just because it enables me to be a bit more accurate. So it's just a case of just using your arrow keys and nudging it where you need to. Okay. Now with this bottom section here, we can actually pull those together too if you wish. So let's pull that back this way. And all I'm doing is clicking and dragging over the node, so it's just selecting just those ones that I need. Okay, and I'll come back and have a look at comments in a minute. So basically you're looking for these nodes to meet halfway. You may or may not get these perfect, but again, it's really not going to show by the time it's all warped, because the warp you're going to do is going to be manual anyway, so there's always going to be a certain amount of leeway for error, shall I say. Go. So now we'll zoom out. I'm just going to click off it, just as long as it doesn't crash, and there you are. You should have something that looks like that. And let's have a look at our comments. Okay, comments are a bit quiet today. Probably a good thing. Okay. So hopefully you can see where our wall is starting to form. And what we want to do now is just make sure that everything is as it should be. So I'm just going to do a union. And again, those areas that overlap should then merge. Way to check, just make sure when you zoom in that we've got rid of all the areas in here. Now it looks like there is still some issues in here. If that's the case, let's show you how to fix it. You have a couple of options. You can use a plaster over the top, which is what I usually show you. And let's see if Object Path can fix it for us nice and quickly. And zoom in. No, it's still got those centre nodes. I don't want to trace it ideally. You can use trace though if you wish. let's go for eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Let's click on this node here. So we know it's one that's wrong, so you can just delete it and take it out. So anything that you know is wrong, usually you can just take it out of your way. So same here, just going to delete that one. With something like this where you've got a side that you join, I'm just going to click and drag over the top and take those out. Now if it does something weird like that, that is because of these handles here. So remember how I always say about handles and what they do? Because they're crossing over, you're going to get an S shape. So what we want to do is go, actually you don't need to be curving like that. You're going to go that way. I'm going to get this handle here. And I'm going to bring it all the way down here. Now, as I said before, because we are working with warp, don't get bogged down by detail, because it's all going to get changed. Just get rid of any nodes that shouldn't be there, just so that when you do the warp, you don't get any unexpected results. And again, these here I don't need. And lovely handles. Come on, back there for you. And get this one and go back up there for you. The actual length of the handle that you're moving back doesn't actually make that much difference, so long as that you're not crossing over each other. Handle to behave down there, and this one can go back over here, like so. I might just put a little bit extra width on this stroke up here using the handle. Just make sure you don't take out your 2 centimetres here, because that's what forms the holes in the middle. So hopefully you have something that looks like that now. And again, do a save. So by the time that we get to step 3, you can see we've already got this warp on it. So to do that, we are going to grab our footy, select it with our arrow tool, and we're going to go to Path Effects. We're going to add a path effect, and it's going to come up with a whole list. Now this can be really daunting to a beginner. What I would say is one day just sit and have a play. So literally put a shape on your mat and go through each item and see what they can do. It's one of those ones where physically doing the exercises will actually help you start to remember. I mean, I could go through each and every single one of them, what they do, but it may not stay in there for you without having that actual practical sit down and play. So it's a good exercise to do. So at first glance we have three options that could do what we want to do. Basically we want to make it inflate and look 3D. We have envelope deformation, where we have a fixed envelope and it will actually warp to that shape. We have perspective envelope, which needs two shapes or more, and it will actually create a perspective. And we have a lattice deformation. So being a lattice, if you're familiar with other software like Illustrator, you'll recognise it as being a mesh. This means that we can have much greater control over our deformation. So let's go for that one, and it's going to pop up into here. Now you'll see that we have some options come up that relate to this deformation. And the top one is mirror movements in horizontal, and we want to say yes. Mirror movements in vertical, you want to say yes, because we're creating something that should be symmetrical on both axes. Now if I go over to my node tool, you're going to see that we can actually see the mesh that is being applied over the top of our football shape. Now, the shape you are going to be creating is going to go against everything that you think you should be doing. So the eventual lattice that you are going to get is going to look like a very curvy X. So rather than looking circular, which you might assume that you would do, because we've already got kind of a circle going on, we haven't got to go that far. We've just got to give it a bit of a helping hand around the outside edges, and we also want to make that centre section look bigger than it does currently. So this is where our mirror movement is going to be really, really useful. If we click on this outside point here of this mesh and we move it in, you can see it's getting an equal movement on the right hand side. And you can see that if I put it up, our centre line is going to curve upwards. If I put it down, it's going to curve downwards. So what we actually want is to keep it nice and level as much as possible. And maybe not that extreme just yet. So we'll go back there. Okay. For our next node along, we're going to pull that out. So you can see where this is going. Our outside is starting to wrap around shape, and our middle section is starting to curve more so. Now as you get more confident with using lattices, you can actually create a more detailed mesh, and you will get much more of a custom result. But when you're first starting out, this is a really good level to kind of get you into doing meshes. So now I'm going to do the same to this point here and pull that out. Now you don't want to pull it out so far that it is starting to look like we are stretching this section. You just still want it to look like it's even, like so. And we're going to pull that centre point in slightly. Now at this point it's going to be really tempting for you to panic and think, but what's going on down here? Don't. Don't panic. So with our corner points we can actually start to control the scale of our mesh. So we're just going to pull that in slightly. Then we can work on our in between nodes here. Now if I move these out, you're going to see that you get one kind of shape. If I move these in, you're going to start to see that we start to get more of our original shape coming back. Now as I said, more mesh you have in terms of these lines, the more you can really get into the nitty-gritty of sorting out things like this section here. So you might go, well actually I'm going to pull that in the other direction. But I think just for now I'm going to leave that there. Pull that back in. So just be aware of what's going on in the middle as well. Let's pull these out a little bit more. Now we want to make these points match so that they look kind of X-shaped. Now I can push these back in. It's always tricky. So let's get that and stretch that back out. The other thing to say is you're never going to get this perfectly round at this stage, so don't get disheartened and go, oh, it's not going to work. You want something that is almost round but not quite round. Because the clipping mask actually hides a multitude of sins, so it's going to pick up some of the bits but not all of it. So it's actually going to make it look like it is being kind of spun round. But concentrate on this section here. I just want to get that a little bit wider because it's starting to look a little bit. Okay. So by going object to path, you are applying that deformation. So applying it is important because up until that point it's just an appearance, and if you were to send it to your scan and cut, if it even worked, it would cut it how it originally looked and not how it looked now. Okay. So if we look at let's close this one now because we're beyond that. We're beyond it. Number 4. You can see that we've got these little bits that skip and miss, and that's because it's being hidden in a clipping mask. Now I want to create a version of this where I can actually cut it out. So a clipping mask isn't going to help us overly, but what will help us is if we actually create an outline that we can sort of surround that with. So let's go back to this one, and I'm going to draw a circle. So this is one where we want to keep it a circle. Come on, let me have a circle over here. It's going to misbehave. Come on. Do. So there's my footy. You can see we could do with it going a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to shrink my circle rather than try and stretch my original outline, so that I have a section. I'm going to move it so that it looks relatively even. So if you look at this little triangle here, this one here and this one here, just want to try and get that in the middle. Is anybody bored yet? You can say yes. Will this be the ball England using to play Denmark? I hope not. It's a bit holy at the moment. Won't exactly hold a lot of air because all of these at the moment are holes. So I'm going to go stroked path again because I want to be able to use that as a frame. I'm going to duplicate it, and if I go to objects, you're going to see that we've got 3 paths. So the bottom one should be our footy, and then we have 2 circles. So I'm going to hide one for now, and then I'm going to select our 2 sections. So it's the bottom football mesh and one of the circles. So far so good, I hope. So if we go to divide, so you see you can do a command and the little backslash, forward slash, where you are. Then you can use that as a shortcut. So what divide does is it basically cookie cutters through everything. So this is good whenever we want to get to individual pieces of something, and we can go divide. Now if it does something weird like this, don't panic. First port of call is to check to see what's actually going on. So it's actually taken out some of the little sections in here. So I'm just going to work my way through and just make sure whether bits are missing or whether they've just been, yeah, see, look, they are there, just they're hiding. So I'm going to put this centre section to the back. So Command Shift and should work. Oh, if not, we can go move to bottom. There you go. Straight away, down the bottom. Now, let's get our little sections that are hiding away in here. And that bottom path. When you feel like it. Come on. There we go. And go to different, which is subtract. So what it should have done is got rid of all of those, but nope, it's going to be different. So just undo that. I'll do it one at a time then. So Command and minus is what you're going to be using as your shortcut. And because I actually like that one, I'm going to leave that one there for now. We've got bits around the outside. Just check. Yep, that's the bit I don't want, so I can delete that. And again, I can move that out of the way and delete that. Move that out of the way and delete that. Now you're going to see that there's going to be some little bits. You can delete those too. And that's just where it was underneath the stroke. There we go. So there's the inside of our football. And we can reveal our outside frame. Now if we look really closely, you can see there are little white lines here. And what that means is if we were to try and do the union at the moment, it's not going to be very successful. So here's a little bit of a cheat. With that circle selected, we're going to go to fill and stroke. Okay. We're going to put a stroke on it, and let's pop it up a little bit, and let's give it a stroke of red, just so you can see it. Let's go down. So you literally just want enough to just cover those white lines, like so. Okay. we're going to go to path and stroke to path. And if we go back to objects, we're going to see that we have a new group that is now both of those objects together. So first of all, we need to ungroup them. So you see that both are selected, and then we can do Command and plus, and that's going to weld the two together. I'm going to zoom out so I can make sure that nothing goes a bit awry with this next step. I'm going to select everything. I'm going to Command and plus, or Control and plus on the PC, and that's going to weld all into one path. So we're not doing too bad. It says that I just had to be done by 1:45. So now to make it look a bit more football-like, we need to have a few coloured in blocks. And this bit is really easy because it's just deleting nodes. So let's take out this panel here. And there's our next block. And we can go pretty random, so it says. My dad's probably saying, no, there is actually a pattern to it. But at this point, I'm not that fussed. It's a football. You may find that you have a few nodes in one place, so just go over the top like that and take them out. Something like this where you've got a little sliver, that's a really good place to choose to take out the little sections. There we go. And same over here. Just in the interest of being a little bit balanced, let's take out this one over here. There you go. There's a basic football. Let's do this one too. Why not? It doesn't take very long to do. Now you'll notice with my level 5 football, it looks stripy, and all that is just using offset to create the layers underneath. So if you didn't want to do that on that layer, then that's fine. Do an offset and do it on the layer underneath so that you create a stripy look. So let's go back to number 5. And you can see what I mean. So if I zoom in, you can see that the red line is our original line where we did all the outline strokes and the actual original warp. The yellow line is just an offset to that with no changes. And then finally the black is another offset, and then I've removed the panels from that one rather than the top one. And that's the only difference in terms of the centre section. As I said, on the outer section, this one is currently using a clipping path, which means that hidden away you have all the extra information that is tucked behind the mask. So if we were to send that to cut as is, what would actually happen is it's going to cut all these bits that are hiding around here and around here. So before I go too far, let's do a save as. So if I go to save as, and let's do new footy. Okay, you can see it's going to save as an SVG. Now what I would say is, if you are doing SVGs for sale, don't necessarily save your for sale copy as an Inkscape SVG. Just make sure that instead you go and save it as a plain SVG, and that's for when you are going to be selling it, or if you're going to be sending it to cut, so that it actually loses some of that inherent Inkscape data. But for this one we can leave it as Inkscape because it's for our reference and we might want to go back and edit it. So click save, and there you go. So for those of you that haven't got Inkscape, you can get it from inkscape.org, and if you need any help installing it, then let me know. There are loads of extensions that you can get in addition to the ones that are already in the program. So when you first open Inkscape, don't think that's all it can do. Yeah, it does a lot without adding anything to it, but there are loads of extensions, including one that is called Ink Stitch, which means that you can create your own embroidery designs. So very quickly I will flick back onto Streamlabs, and I will just that's okay, Jacy. Thank you, Linda. Is Inkscape free? Yes, it is. Tis. Quarter to one is too early. They don't kick off till 8. No, quarter to one is when his lunch is. So I'll be in trouble if I miss lunch. He already nags me that I work too much as it is. Okay, so Carol, if you need help setting up Inkscape, let me know and I will show you through it. It did say about me showing it on stream, but I'm just looking at the time and thinking, oh, I don't think you really want to be bored with me that much longer. Actually, let me see if I can just hop on Safari and Inkscape. There we go. So inkscape.org, and then you can go to download, and you have an option of if you want to download the current version or the latest development version. Now, as a beginner, make sure you click on current version, so that's the one that they know is stable and is working as expected. The latest development version I would recommend for more advanced users that are used to troubleshooting software if it does misbehave, or certainly not doing anything in that you'll be charging for, in the sense of like one-offs or commissions, just in case it did crash and cost you a load of time. And you can also see in that download section extensions as well, so you can see just a few of the options. So you've got the option to do a laser cut jigsaw, a laser cut tab box, and then you've got all sorts of really funky things. So you've got packaging set in there that you can download, barcodes if you want to. You've even got this one's going to be a fun one for the new paper piercing tool, so that you actually have patterns that you can actually do some pricking with. So certainly be interesting. And you have this one as well, which is also fun to play with. And down the right hand side, if you're looking for something in particular, there's some little categories that can help you. And if you're really stuck, you can go for a search. So Inkstitch does have its own separate website as well, so that you can find out more about that. And if you Google Inkscape extensions, I'm sure you'll find far more than just those that are on the Inkscape website. So it's open source software, so it is actually developed by lots of people across the globe working as a little community. and you can also create your own extensions once you get comfortable with programming. So that kind of takes you through everything. So take care for now, and I will say bye. So you're welcome, Deb, and have fun. Ta-ra.